Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're deeply deconstructing a single, massively successful piece of fitness content to figure out exactly why it captured so much attention across the globe. The internet is just completely flooded with workout tutorials, fitness tips, quick fix exercises, you name it. But every once in a while, a specific piece of content cuts through all that noise. It literally stops millions of scrolling thumbs dead in their tracks. So we're going to look at the anatomy of one of these viral hits, breaking down the visual science, the structure, and the psychology behind its absolutely brilliant design.
I want to anchor us right out of the gate with this staggering number, 575,000. That's the amount of likes this one single piece of visual content received on just one platform. Over 500,000 people saw this and felt compelled to tap that heart icon. But as anyone who studies digital content knows, likes are really just the tip of the iceberg, right? They show passive approval, sure, but they don't necessarily tell us if the information was actually useful. To understand the true impact, we've got to look a little deeper into the data.
Take a look at these extended viral engagement metrics. Yes, we have our 575,000 likes and nearly 900 comments. But the real story, it's right there in those last two numbers. 77,700 sends, meaning people directly sent this to a friend or a workout partner, and a massive 89,300 saves. When someone actually hits save, it proves the content isn't just entertaining, it's highly actionable educational material. Over 160,000 people combined decided this information was so valuable and so efficiently presented that they needed it in their personal library to reference later at the gym or in their living room.
All right, let's dive into the actual piece of content posted by a creator named Coach Kenny24. This visually dense 4-panel split-screen format is going to be our home base for the entire analysis today. At a quick glance, it might just look like your standard push-up tutorial, but the way this information is organized is practically a masterclass in visual communication.
The brilliance here really lies in that split-screen strategy. Notice how it totally divides our visual field. On the left side, we've got these highly stylized 3D anatomical models with bright red highlight zones to show muscle activation and crisp blue directional arrows mapping out the path of tension. Then, on the right side, we get the real-time human application. An athlete in a physical gym sweating and actively demonstrating the movement on a blue mat. By pairing internal biomechanics with the external human form, it beautifully bridges the gap between complex kinesiology and your everyday home workout.
And you know what's equally fascinating? What's completely missing from this post? The text. The creator, Coach Kenny24, barely used any text in the caption at all. It literally just says upper body workout, #viral. That is it. There are no lengthy paragraphs explaining shoulder width, no bullet points about muscle fatigue, no complex anatomical terms to read through. The creator relies entirely on the visual dual coding of the graphics to teach the lesson. It's a bold choice, but it implies the visual is strong enough to stand entirely on its own.
To understand exactly why this works so well, we're going to break down the 4 distinct rows from top to bottom. We have the wide form, shifted back, standard, and finally, the forward lean.
Starting right at the top, notice the athlete on the right. He's performing what looks like a push-up variation, but his hand placement is notably wide, and his hands are actually pointing slightly outward away from his body. Now, if you were just watching him do this in the gym, you might not immediately know why he chose this specific, kind of awkward-looking stance.
But the 3D model instantly solves that mystery for us. The blue arrows act as this brilliant visual guide. They point straight up along the sides of the torso, drawing your eye right to those bright red zones. Those red zones identify the latissimus dorsi, your lats. So the graphic instantly tells you that this wide grip variation is pulling tension away from the chest and throwing it straight into the sides of the back.
And that brings us to a supercritical educational concept, visual dual coding. This is the process of simultaneously processing clear graphical indicators, like those neon red zones and bright blue arrows, right alongside realistic physical demonstrations. This format manages the viewer's cognitive load beautifully. You don't have to read a complex description and try to visualize it in your head. The concept and the physical reality are fused together, making complex muscle activation instantly and intuitively understandable. No reading required.
Building on that, let's move down to the second row and see how the movement evolves. The athlete has moved his hands much further back down his torso, closer to his waist. This changes the entire leverage point of his body against gravity. It's just a really subtle geometric shift in the real world, but it causes a massive change internally. And once again, the 3D model confirms exactly what's happening. The perspective zooms in heavily on the arm.
You'll see a specific, singular blue arrow pointing straight down, visually confirming exactly where that mechanical tension has shifted. The bicep is highlighted in red, clearly showing that by shifting the center of gravity backward, the load has been transferred heavily onto the arms rather than the core or the back.
Now, the crucial point in the third row is just pure simplicity. We see a massive, symmetrical, bright red highlight covering both pectorals on the anatomical model. Notice there are no fancy directional arrows here at all, just a solid block of red, indicating maximum foundational engagement of the chest muscles. Connect that directly to the athlete demonstrating the classic standard shoulder width push-up position. By placing the standard form right in the middle of the sequence, the graphic actually provides a baseline. It shows you the control variable. Standard grip equals chest. Once you've got that baseline established, the variations above and below it make perfect logical sense. Finally, look really closely at the athlete's posture in the last row at the bottom. He has his hands planted, sure, but he is leaning his entire body weight significantly forward, pushing his shoulders out way past his wrists. It looks incredibly strenuous, right? It's a posture often referred to as a planche lean in gymnastics or calisthenics.
So why endure that specific strain? Well, the corresponding 3D model gives us the immediate payoff. Bright red caps are isolated exclusively on the very top of the shoulders. The chest isn't red, the arms aren't red, just those shoulder caps. It is absolute visual proof that leaning forward changes the angle of resistance to perfectly isolate the anterior deltoids.
And this brilliantly illustrates the whole shebang. A wide grip hits the lats, moving the hands back hits the biceps, the standard grip hits the pecs, and that forward lean isolates the deltoids. It perfectly synthesizes how 4 incredibly subtle changes in hand placement and body angle result in a comprehensive, full upper body workout. And the crazy part? The viewer learned all of this in the 5 to 10 seconds it took them to scroll past the image. But wait, there's one final layer to this explainer that we definitely can't ignore. And it's all about how modern digital information is actually built. If you look really closely at the original source image, you'll spot a faint watermark reading Fitness Labo stamped across those 3D models. The audio track applied to the post is credited to Harry.Chimanga, and the entire package was posted and popularized by Coach.Kenny24. What this reveals is that this viral hit is actually a clever curation of existing digital assets. The creator didn't necessarily build those 3D models from scratch. They just recognize the massive educational power of combining these specific assets together into one seamless, highly shareable package. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought as we wrap up. Does removing text entirely actually make educational content more powerful? Think about it. Because this post relied completely on a universal visual language, red for the target, blue for the direction, all next to a human demonstration, it completely transcended language barriers. It honestly didn't matter if you spoke English, Spanish, Japanese, or Arabic. The human body and the visual geometry of a push-up is universally understood. Perhaps the real secret to those hundreds of thousands of interactions wasn't just the workout itself, but the total elimination of the friction of reading. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it changes the way you look at the content you scroll past every single day.